The wind clawed at the tattered flags over Forward Base Halberd, carrying the scent of diesel and despair. In the command tent, laughter broke the static silence. A general's booming chuckle echoed off the canvas walls, sharp, mocking, unknowing. What he didn't know was that the woman he mocked wasn't there to impress him. She was there to judge him. The tent smelled of cold metal and reheated coffee. The briefing had just ended when Captain Mara Jennings stepped forward, her boots sinking slightly into the muddy canvas floor. Her uniform bore the stains of work, not ceremony. Across the room, General Wade Callister stood at the center of his court of officers, puffed with self-importance and chestful medals that gleamed like armor against accountability. Mara's voice was steady but quiet. "Sir, I need to verify a security breach in your northern supply line." The laughter came instantly. A cruel, amused sound. Callister's eyes narrowed as he looked her up and down. "Security breach?" he repeated. "Who exactly are you, Captain? I don't recall authorizing any audit personnel." "I'm here under special clearance," she said, reaching into her uniform pocket. The room went still as she produced a small metallic badge, black with a gold insignia that caught the tent's single hanging light. Callister snorted. "Is this a joke? That's not even a real badge." A few officers laughed nervously. One muttered, "Maybe she bought it online." Mara didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed fixed on him, calm, unblinking. "I understand, General. Most people don't recognize it right away." The general waved a dismissive hand. "Well, until someone from actual command vouches for you, you're dismissed, Captain. Go file your fake report somewhere else." She didn't move. Didn't even blink. "You might want to take another look before you laugh, sir." He smirked. "And why's that?" "Because it's not your command I report to," she said softly. "It's his." The badge turned slightly in the light, revealing the Cryer presidential seal embossed at its center. The laughter died instantly. The air itself seemed to pause. By nightfall, the storm outside had grown stronger, battering the base with icy rain and wind that screamed through every gap in the metal siding. Mara sat alone in the small operations cabin, reviewing fuel transport logs and personnel records. The badge lay on the table beside her, half covered by a thin layer of dust. She never flaunted it. She never had to. Mara Jennings was no ordinary officer. She wasn't technically military at all, not anymore. After years in logistics and field operations, she had been recruited into the Presidential Oversight Unit, a covert division under direct executive authority, responsible for auditing corruption within the armed forces. Her last assignment had broken her. The report she'd filed had led to an entire battalion being disbanded, men she'd once served with. The guilt still haunted her, but the truth mattered more than her comfort. And tonight she could feel that same sickness in the data flashing before her eyes. Fuel shipments were being rerouted, thousands of gallons of high-grade aviation fuel disappearing under storm recovery operations. A trail of falsified signatures led back to Callister's division. She closed her eyes, hearing the general's laughter again. It wasn't the insult that stung, it was what it represented. Arrogance, power without accountability. The very disease she was sent to expose. Outside, lightning illuminated the entire base for a heartbeat. In that brief flash, her reflection stared back from the window, tired, resolute, and utterly alone. Her mission wasn't about catching a thief. It was about testing a leader's soul, and Wade Callister, she feared, was already failing. Morning came gray and heavy. The rain had turned the base into a maze of mud and tire tracks. Callister strutted through it, shouting at subordinates and inspecting trucks, pretending to be busy enough to avoid her. Mara followed him silently to the motor pool, where fuel convoys idled in neat rows. Her voice carried across the hum of engines. "General Callister, the President's office has requested an immediate inventory audit of your northern sector." He turned sharply. "You're not authorized to—" "Sir," she interrupted, "your authorization was suspended this morning." He froze. The convoy officers exchanged uneasy glances. "How dare you?" he hissed. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "Yes," she said quietly. "That's why I'm here." The words hit harder than any shout. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. Her badge wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a key that unlocked doors most generals would never even know existed. A call from her could end his career before sunset. Still, she didn't threaten. She didn't grandstand. She simply walked toward the lead fuel truck, pulled the inspection seal from the valve, and wiped her glove across the residue. The smell hit instantly. Chemical. Wrong. Not standard military-grade JP-8. Her pulse quickened. She'd seen this before. Contaminated fuel meant sabotage, or worse, smuggling. Someone had replaced official supplies with cheap, unstable substitutes and pocketed the difference. She turned back toward the general, whose face had paled. "You already knew, didn't you?" she asked. He didn't answer, and in that silence the truth began to scream. By afternoon the wind turned vicious. Radio lines snapped and visibility dropped to near zero. Callister retreated to the comms bunker, pacing like a caged animal. Mara stood near the back, reading encrypted messages from Washington through static bursts. One line flashed through clearly. Unauthorized fuel transfer confirmed. Presidential review team inbound. She looked up. "They're coming, General." He slammed his fist onto the table. "You don't understand. We needed that fuel to keep operations running. Washington doesn't see what we're dealing with out here." Her voice remained calm, even gentle. "You didn't steal to survive, sir. You stole because you thought no one would ever look." He spun toward her, eyes blazing. "You think you're better than me? Sitting there with your secret little badge and your moral superiority?" She didn't respond. She just watched as thunder rattled the bunker walls. In his anger, he revealed everything. The falsified manifests, the shell companies, the accounts routed through civilian contractors. Years of deceit wrapped in a uniform. And still she pitied him. Because once upon a time she'd been like him, thinking one compromise in service of the mission didn't matter. Until it did. The storm outside raged through the night. Power flickered, sirens wailed in the distance. Mara stood by the window of her quarters, staring out into the chaos. On her table lay the files, dozens of them, ready for the review team. The evidence was undeniable, but something in her heart felt heavier than victory. She thought about the young soldiers outside, still obeying Callister's orders without knowing the truth. She thought about the trust they placed in leaders like him, and she thought about her own father, a colonel who'd lost everything after blowing the whistle on corruption 20 years ago. Justice had a cost. She knew that better than anyone. As dawn began to bleed through the storm clouds, Mara whispered softly to herself, "The seal isn't power. It's responsibility." Tomorrow the review team would arrive. Tomorrow truth would replace laughter. And tomorrow the man who mocked her would face the seal he'd never outrank. The next morning broke like a wound, red light cutting through the thinning storm clouds. The base was quieter now, uneasy. Soldiers moved slower, whispers following every passing officer. The word had spread. A team from Washington was inbound. General Callister stood on the airstrip, jaw locked, hands behind his back, trying to look unbothered. But sweat gathered at his collar despite the cold. His pride had always been his armor, and now it was cracking. The sound of helicopter rotors grew louder, a deep, rhythmic thunder that shook the puddles beneath their boots. When the craft touched down, the doors opened not to a swarm of suits, but just two people. One security officer and a quiet, gray-haired woman in a trench coat. Mara met them halfway. "Director Hale?" she greeted. The older woman nodded slightly. "Captain Jennings, I read your preliminary report." "You've done well." Callister's voice broke through the wind. "Ma'am, this is a misunderstanding. My operations have been completely transparent." "Then you won't mind us verifying that," Hale said without looking at him. The general's mouth twitched. The same twitch that comes when a proud man realizes the stage he built is now his courtroom. The audit began immediately. Sealed crates opened, manifests cross-checked, fuel samples tested. One by one the lies began to unravel. Mara didn't gloat. She simply watched, silent, her arms folded, the badge now pinned visibly to her chest. When one of the inspectors approached with a vial of murky fuel, Hale looked to Mara. "You were right. Contaminated. Non-military grade." Callister's face turned the color of ash. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the wind brushing through the flags. "General," Hale said, "you'll surrender your command pending investigation." The words landed like a detonation. But Callister didn't move. His eyes found Mara's, blazing with something between fury and despair. "You think you've saved something today?" he said bitterly. "All you did was destroy the one man keeping this base alive." Mara didn't look away. "No, sir. I saved the men who believed in you." The day dragged on with the heaviness of aftermath. The base continued to operate, but everything felt hollow. Callister's personal effects were boxed up. His nameplate removed from the command door. Yet still he refused to leave. He sat alone in his now bare office, staring at a photograph on his desk. A faded image of younger men in dusty uniforms, him among them, smiling. His hand trembled slightly as he traced a face in the picture. When Mara entered, he didn't look up. "Come to watch the fall?" he asked quietly. "I came to tell you that you'll be transported to DC at 1600 hours, she replied. He nodded absently, then whispered, "Do you even know why I did it?" Mara hesitated. "To make a profit? To cut corners?" He laughed once, a sound filled with exhaustion, not humor. "You think it's that simple? You think the system you serve isn't broken? Washington sends us half the supplies we need and expects miracles. I filled the gaps. That's all. I kept this base running." Mara's gaze softened. "At what cost?" His eyes finally met hers. "At the cost of being the villain in your story." She wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong. But something in his voice stopped her. Beneath the arrogance and anger there was fear, the kind that comes when a man realizes he's been living a lie long enough to believe it was duty. When she turned to leave, he spoke again, softer this time. "When they strip my rank, they'll forget my name. But you'll remember, won't you?" She paused in the doorway. "Yes," she said, "because you taught me what not to become." And for the first time, Callister didn't have a retort. That night, the base lights flickered, and for a moment, Mara was transported back to another place, another lifetime. A dark room, her father's voice low but steady. "When the truth cost you everything, that's when you know it's real." Her father had been court-martialed for exposing the same kind of corruption she now fought against. He'd died alone, his name never cleared. She had vowed that one day she would finish what he started, not out of vengeance, but for the kind of honor the world seemed to have forgotten. The irony hit her like a punch. She'd just destroyed a man who wasn't entirely evil, only broken by a machine that rewarded silence and punished integrity. She sat by the barracks steps, the night air cold against her face. A young sergeant approached hesitantly. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For caring enough to look." "Most people don't." Mara smiled faintly. "It's easy to look. Harder to see." The soldier nodded and walked away, leaving her alone with the sound of distant thunder and the slow realization that justice rarely felt like victory. In her hand, she turned the badge over, tracing the eagle and the seal beneath her thumb. It didn't feel like power anymore. It felt like weight. Tomorrow, the press would call her a hero. But tonight she just wanted to be a daughter her father would be proud of. The convoy departed at dawn. 2 black SUVs and a transport van rolled slowly toward the airstrip. Mara watched from a distance as Callister, stripped of insignia, was escorted to the vehicle. He looked smaller now, not in stature, but in spirit. The wind tugged at his jacket as he paused at the door. For a moment he turned and met her eyes across the distance. There was no hatred left in his gaze, only a quiet, weary understanding. Mara gave him a slow, respectful nod. It wasn't forgiveness, and it was acknowledgement. Two soldiers on opposite ends of the same truth. As the vehicles disappeared into the mist, the sound of rotors echoed again, but this time it didn't feel like judgment. It felt like closure. The base slowly returned to motion. The men began to laugh again, work again, believe again. And though no one said it aloud, they all looked at her differently now. Not as a stranger, but as someone who carried something greater than authority, responsibility. Mara exhaled deeply, the wind brushing through her hair. Justice wasn't always loud. Sometimes it whispered, and sometimes it wore a badge no one recognized until it was too late. The airstrip was quiet after the convoy disappeared beyond the horizon. Mara remained there long after everyone else had gone, her boots sinking slightly into the rain-softened dirt. The sound of engines fading into distance felt like an ending, and yet something inside her whispered it wasn't. Director Hale approached, her expression unreadable beneath her gray curls. "You did well," she said softly. "The report will be filed under presidential authority. Your work here is done." But Mara shook her head. "No, ma'am. It isn't." Hale's eyes narrowed. "You have something else?" Mara handed her a tablet. "Fuel isn't the only thing missing. Funds have been moved through civilian contracts into a private foundation. Callister was only one piece of it." Hale studied her for a long moment, the wind tugging at their coats. "You know what this means, don't you?" "Yes," Mara replied. "It means I'm not going home yet." The director gave a faint nod. "Then God help you, Captain." As the helicopter blades began to turn again, Mara looked once more at the badge pinned to her chest. The seal caught the morning light, gold against the gray sky. It no longer felt like judgment. It felt like purpose. Days passed. The storm cleared, the base repaired itself, and normal life returned, at least on the surface. But under that fragile calm, Mara continued her investigation quietly. Late one night, she found herself in the deserted communications room, replaying encrypted files she had recovered from Callister's archives. The data traced payments through dummy contractors into offshore accounts belonging to men who wore the same uniform she did. Each discovery felt like a bruise on her heart. Every new name she uncovered made the war feel less about nations and more about integrity. In one file, she found something unexpected, a voice message from Callister, sent weeks before her arrival. "If they send someone, tell them I didn't start this. I just tried to survive it." She sat in silence, the message looping softly through static. For the first time, she wondered if she had been too quick to see villains instead of victims. She turned off the recorder and whispered into the empty room. Maybe survival isn't the same as corruption. Maybe it's just surrender. Outside, a cold wind brushed against the windows, carrying the faint echo of a distant storm. 3 weeks later, Mara was summoned to Washington. The White House itself stood serene against a winter sky, white columns gleaming in the pale sunlight. She'd been here before, but this time felt different. The president didn't meet her in the Oval Office. It was a smaller, warmer room filled with photos of soldiers, aid workers, and families. He studied her as she entered. "Captain Jennings," he said, voice steady but kind. "You exposed something deeply wrong, and I owe you thanks for that." Mara inclined her head. "Thank you, Mr. President." He motioned toward a chair.
"But I read your full report."
"You didn't just find corruption. You found despair, among people who gave everything for their duty. You understand that justice without compassion becomes another form of tyranny." She nodded slowly, emotion tightening her throat. "You have my authority," he continued, "to lead a new program, one that protects whistleblowers within the military. It's time we stopped punishing integrity." Mara blinked. "Sir, I don't know if I'm the right person." The president smiled faintly. "That's why you are." For the first time in years, she felt something shift inside her, something like peace. Months later, she returned to Forward Base Halberd. The air was warmer now, the earth firm again beneath her boots. Soldiers she passed greeted her with quiet respect. No salutes, just small nods that said more than words. She visited the motor pool first. The smell of clean fuel, the hum of running engines, it all felt like a second chance. As she walked, a young lieutenant hurried over.
"Ma'am, it's strange seeing you back here," he said, smiling nervously. "Strange is good," she replied softly.
It means we're changing. She paused where she had once stood face to face with Callister. The sunlight fell across the empty space like a benediction. She whispered into the wind, "You weren't wrong about everything, General. You were just lost too long to remember where the truth was." And in that quiet, she finally forgave him. That evening, she sat in her quarters, writing a letter she knew would never be sent. "Dear Dad, I think I finally understand what you meant. Truth doesn't shout, it endures. I thought strength meant standing tall, but maybe it just means refusing to kneel to what's wrong. I used to wish you hadn't done what you did. Now I'm grateful you did, because every time I hold this badge I remember who gave me the courage to wear it." Her pen hovered, then she signed her name quietly. Mara Jennings. Tears blurred the ink, but she didn't wipe them away. They belonged there. Proof that she still felt, that she still cared. A few weeks later, she attended a quiet ceremony at the Pentagon. No cameras, no applause. Just a folded flag, a citation, and the president's seal embossed on a single plaque. It read, "For valor not in combat, but in conscience." When it was over, she stood before the marble wall engraved with thousands of names, those who had given everything. She ran her fingers along the cold surface, whispering, "We fight more than wars. We fight ourselves." Outside, the world moved on. People hurried, laughed, forgot. But somewhere on a windswept base far from home, a lone soldier looked up at the flag and remembered the woman who taught them what integrity looks like. And Mara Jennings, standing in that silent hall, finally smiled. Not because she had won, but because she had endured. If this story touched you, take a moment to remember the unseen heroes, the ones who choose truth when silence would be easier. Subscribe, like, and press the bell icon to keep hearing stories that remind us courage isn't about power. It's about standing alone when the world looks away.